What are we doing? Just creating a new hangout? Hello?
Hey,
Oh, sorry,
So,
I just ran out of disk space on my recording, so I went ahead and opened this up for live to continue on, if that's okay.
we're right. Um, okay. So, so what I like to do to kind of like mess with people sometimes, as it relates to, I guess, in quotes, God's domain, basically, where I guess angels and all these other spiritual entities reside, is that I would just say, hey, it's most likely another universe. It just so happens to be you probably have to be in a particular state that God grants you to go there, right? Now, me personally, I don't believe when you die you go to heaven or anything like that. I believe in the whole new creation thing,
right.
right? But, just to mess with people, I'd be like, I just think that's just a completely different universe based on my understanding that what I read, it seems to operate under very different physics and stuff like that, right? So people would like go silent. They're like, are you proposing a multiverse? So I'm like, I mean, if I hold to a being that is all powerful, who can create shit, I wouldn't see any reason why he wouldn't create multiple universes. And then people's minds are like blown. You're like, I mean, listen, it's just speculation on my part. You get what I'm saying? I'm not saying this is actually the case,
Right. Yeah. I know what you're
right?
saying.
But I'm just saying, even if you want to use that and say, hey, there's a multiverse, therefore there wouldn't be a god, it wouldn't make sense to use that as an argument, right? Because a being who's as powerful or maximally powerful or whatever you want to call it would be able to create multiple universes for whatever reason. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
mainly I mainly just floated around to fuck with people. So I just
One
wanted to see your take on it.
one thing that we find in the Bible are these locational references. When people pray to God, they lift their hands in their air, they lift their faces into the air, they shout to heaven. You have trumpets that blow to heaven, then you have God looking down on man and watching the world from above. And you have statements like the clouds can't block his vision, suggesting a location above us and looking down. There's ideas that roofs might block God's vision. So it seems like they envision God above us in some sense.
I think that's a given, considering they saw most beings of power as necessarily being gods, and so they're always depicted at being either in the sky or on the top of mountains, right? So, it doesn't really matter to me for the most part, but I think it goes to say that, if you believe this being it has access to every facet of reality, it really doesn't matter where you hold your head up to whenever you pray. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's strange, but like I like their more grounded approach as it relates to God. Then again, it has its detriments in that there are circumstances where they just didn't really give a shit, right? Because they still do whatever the hell they wanted to do in the first place. You hear what I'm saying? And I wouldn't make the argument in saying that, oh, they were dumb, they didn't know any better, right? It's clear that they are thinking people. The other interesting thing too is that it, I think one of the major struggles that they had to go through was becoming polytheistic. Oh no, moving from polytheism, I should say, right? Where they always, thought about multiple gods, right? Um, and some even worship multiple gods, and that was something that obviously God did not want them to do, because worshiping other gods, in doing so, they practice other religious stuff like human sacrifice, child sacrifice, stuff like that, right?
Right.
So, you know, that's
But
one of
wasn't that
the
related to infidelity?
no, they were literally worshiping other deities, other beings. Whether you see them as like actual
Right, but
beings
that
or
was a form
idols.
of infidelity on their part.
Oh yeah, I guess you could look at it that way.
So I think that Israel would be better described as henotheists. They believed that there was an ultimate God, Yahweh, who ruled over lesser deities. And so even in the New Testament, you see Paul saying what they sacrifice to these gods, they're sacrificing to demons. You have a text like Psalms 82, where he's disposing the false gods of their rule and reclaiming rule. You have texts like his punishment in Egypt during the exodus of the Egyptian gods. It says he punishes the Egyptians' gods as well. So it's not like they denied other divine beings who function as gods in some respects. They didn't say that the Baal worshippers were worshiping a fake god that doesn't exist. There are a lot of statements about how these idols are just idols and they don't have any power. That is true, but they don't deny the existence of other gods.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably their main struggle in that during the wars when they were supposed to get attain the promised land, right? I think one of God's main goals were to destroy Canaanite culture, right? Because religion and culture is kind of tied into one, right? And so
Right.
the idea is that he would destroy that culture, right, and spread the one that he wants to spread. You destroy that culture, you destroy that God, right? So I look. It's weird. Like I look at God as like more of like a strategy. Like sometimes he'll be a father, right? Sometimes he'll be a strategist. Sometimes he'll be the really angry dad, right? Like
Right.
there's so many facets to this one entity. And when I hear he is simple and unchanging, it just sounds retarded to me.
Right. So that's a difference. I try to point out the difference between metaphysics and a person. Instead of God being a series of formulas that you just put inputs into and then he just spits outputs, he's instead a person with thoughts, motivations, desires, his emotions sometimes dictate which course of actions that he chooses. He interacts with people, he changes his mind. So God in the Bible, how the Israelites conceptualized him as he's a person. Instead of building a theory of metaphysics, the ontology of God, they built a character profile, a sketch of who God is based on the data of his events and his interactions with mankind. Two different thought processes.
Yep. I think the other interesting thing too is and I mean, when I just kind of started looking into it, one of the first things that I asked myself was like, why would a being who creates the whole universe would want to have a relationship with things that are essentially dust, right? Like stars are more fucking like grander than us. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, are they? They seem to be just entities like rocks, that just
no,
sit there.
when I say grand, I was just talking about like in size and effect,
Right.
right? That they have on the overall environment, right? And so I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, why? Right? Why us? What do you think that answer is, basically?
It seems like God wanted relationship. God wanted creatures to interact with. He's curious about these creatures. You see his first act towards mankind is to bring the animals to Adam to see what Adam would call him. He's curious over his new creation. This is a living, thinking being. It's like you have a new baby. You're curious to see what your baby girl does. What does she crawl over to? What does she want to do? And where does she want to go? And it's like you're a father. You're creating a being that's rational, that's capable, that's functional, that you could interact with, that's unpredictable. It's fundamentally at the deepest level, you don't know where this being's gonna go, and you want to find out. You want to be able to interact with this being and have a relationship. And that's really what the Bible seems like to me.
Yeah, I mean, if someone were to ask me, for example, um,
You joined twice.
that is my bad. Hold on a second.
You can't join with two devices.
Can you hear me?
A little bit. You're a little scratchy.
A little scratchy. How about now?
Yeah, that sounds better.
Okay. My bad. I just switched over to my phone.
Okay, because it does sound a little scratched, like the connection isn't solid, but you sound good when it's connected, but there's a little scratchiness involved.
Okay. I'll switch back over to my laptop. I'm just going for a quick walk, real quick, and to go pick up something at the store. But while we're yeah, I don't know. I think my view of that particular situation is that, you know, since since he's a thinking entity, right? Like, I think being conscious and thinking would warrant interaction. You get what I'm saying? And so, I having 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 interaction and relationships, I think, are very important in when it comes to thinking entities. And so, whenever people have conversations about love and stuff like that as it relates to God, and I don't attach these, like, I don't see it as this like attribute. I just see it for what it is, which is just basically something that exists between thinking minds. It's a form. It's a result of a particular relationship. So, in a lot of these debates where they're debating the problem of evil as it relates to omnibenevolence and stuff like that, like, you run into these dumb issues, right? Like, that a lot of Christians will put themselves in and saying, hey, God is all loving, but he does bad things, right? And then they run in circles to justify those claims. And I'm like, where, like, yeah, you'll see in the Bible that it says God is love, right? But you do know that God can be hyperbolic, right? Like he can say, sure. It's, I don't know, like,
they take it as an ontology. They think it's a metaphysical claim about God's substance. It's because they're stuck in this mindset of metaphysics. That's what they want. They want God to be a formula that they could just put inputs into and get outputs out of. They could say, this is how God works and how God functions. If XYZ happens, then God does XYZ. It's simple, it's clean, it's effective, and then they debate each other over who has the best formula for God. Well, God doesn't function like that in the Bible. God's a person.
Yep. So one of the things that I brought up that basically got almost everyone jumping on my case, including Mr. Ironic, was my what I brought up about Job, right? In terms about, like, what the real lesson to Job was, right? And what we should take away from it. And so, long story short, it was all about grace, and that understanding that the things that we have or do not have, all of that it's based on God's grace, right? So none of the things that Job had, he didn't do anything, and there was nothing he could have done to get those things, because there were men who were just as righteous as him who didn't have as much, who weren't as physically blessed, so to speak. And so
there were people as righteous as Job. The intro to the narrative contradicts that.
So that's the funny thing, right?
my thing is that are we conflating righteousness in that particular situation as it relates to being in consort with God, right? Like you are favored, right? Or morally righteous, right? And so I think when it says righteous, it was just talking about morally righteous. Like he's a righteous man in that respect. But his righteousness, um, his view was that he has the thing simply because he is righteous.
That his view is that. Did you just drop off?
I don't know. That doesn't. That's to me somehow that's in. It doesn't mesh well. I don't think with Job's statement that naked I came into the world and naked I'll return thither. The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with it, though, right? Because he
I'm saying someone.
acknowledged. See,
I'm saying
that's the
some.
thing. Like acknowledging.
Whew.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. You're talking and then you're breaking up or something.
Yeah, you're breaking up. I think you're losing signal.
Yeah, I think you're
I'm
losing signal.
probably losing signal. No. So what I was saying was that, sure, he understands. He understands that all the things that he's gotten, right, that he had gotten it from God. But in terms of his misunderstanding was that he did things like like think of it this way, right? Like you do something, he does something good, and he gets rewarded. So it was more like a cosmic genie type situation. You hear what I'm
I don't
saying?
see it. No,
Yeah.
I don't know
Retributive
if it.
justice is a huge theme in the book of Job. And basically, all of Job's friends believe in retributive justice. And Job,
Hmm.
during the dialogue portion, he says that retributive justice is not an aspect of this universe, and God takes the side of Job.
Yeah, like I don't know. That's what I took from it, because at the end of the day, right, Job was always seen as being righteous. He was never seen as being unrighteous in any way. You
Yeah,
hear what I'm saying?
yeah, that's true.
Like it wasn't a situation where his faith was being questioned either, right? So what other lesson could there be that Job needed to learn?
It
And
wasn't about Job.
I think that whole story was about Job and what we should learn from it.
Well, in the narrative portion, it sets it up where it's a discussion between the Satan, the accuser, and Yahweh, where they have to deal with this question of whether Job serves God for reward or whether someone, any human being, could serve God for nothing. And so this is an existential question that God has to deal with, and he has to allow this test to go through to its fruition to see if anyone could serve God for naught, serve God without recompense, or if the only reason God has anyone who follows him, anyone who worships him, is because he blesses those people with material wealth. Trying to figure out what comes first, the chicken or the egg.
That's pretty much. Sorry if the noise is like super loud. I'm still on the road. Like that was the thing that I was questioning, right? Like, is it a situation where it was that he did things to get those to get the life that he lived, or was it what was in his heart? Was it his faith? Like, because he never lacked any of those things. Like, you read through the whole chapter, he never lacked any of those things. So, and think about it. What does I guess I'm a little arrogant in that what does God have to prove to this one singular entity who means nothing, right? And so God already knows, in the sense that he knows Job's heart. He didn't doubt him, right? And so that, to me, just kind of circumvent the whole side story of that whole thing, right? Like that just kind of put it out, because God already knew that situation is going to end, in the sense that he knows what's in Job's heart, and who Job is a man. So I asked myself the question again: what was it about? So I'm kind of approaching it from like like this form of like elimination aspect, elimination thing, right? Well, I'm trying to rule out all these things that is already established. Um, and so if it's already established, just ignore it. What's the root of all of this, right? Because at the end of the day, Job wanted to know why he was going through those things he went through. Why was all of these things taken away, right? Has he not? Because he did lament at the end of the day, right? And how did God respond? God basically showed him the whole world and say, well, can you comprehend this? Can you do this? Do you know how this was? Do you know how this is made? Right?
Yeah.
So he technically didn't directly answer his question, but he did answer his question in that how I judge and bless is not based on this one particular principle that you have in your mind. You get what I'm saying? Like there's a bigger world that I look at and I assess.
Yeah, basically that's what he's doing. He's shutting Job down, saying you don't have standing to bring these accusations against me because you are a small part of this overall grand creation that you have no idea about. You're speaking from a position of ignorance.
Yep. And this is why I said, right? Like I think it's a situation where, you know, God does these things based on, his grace. Like all of those things was he just got it because he didn't have to give him any of those things. So I think that's the most interesting aspect of it and what I took away from. I did write a little article on it. Um, I'll see if I can find it and share it with you. But yeah, I mean, I think the three books of wisdom are ignored too much, if you ask me. I think they have a ton to teach, but
Mhm.
then again, people don't like the whole. Yeah, they'll read Proverbs because it's it and talks about wisdom of the Lord and all of that stuff. But you know,
Yeah.
Ecclesiastes, because they're dark in nature, and so people ignoring those things. I feel like people kind of develop these thoughts as to like how God runs the world as it relates to justice and love and who gets what. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If someone was to ask me, how do you think God runs the world? When it comes to, I don't know, who gets rich from who doesn't, right? I'm gonna be like, I don't know.
Right. Sometimes there's no correlation. Sometimes God blesses people. It's not hard
Yeah,
and fast rules.
yeah.
So
Like,
I have a question related to, well, we were talking about I mean, it kind of, we're talking about the love of, or what would prompt God maybe to make the world, Odin. I think you were kind of pondering that question, what was
yeah. What's
behind,
your take?
So, I've always kind of considered it, at least since I've been considering it, the best answer to that, is somehow connected to God being love, and or his nature being loving, So if you look at that and you picture the Godhead, or however we want to picture Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, you know, I can easily see them existing in loving relationship, right? Because I think love involves relationship. You can't have love, you know, just one person, I don't think could love. But anyways, I think God, you know, wanted love is the kind of thing that wants to, you know, it sort of wants and needs to be expressed, sort of, you know, it is best enjoyed, you know, being shared or something like that. So seems to me that idea, you know, and so, but what I thought I could bring this back to Platonism maybe a little bit, because it seems like there's another camp in the Christian world that thinks God is all, like, because I think God is all about his love, you know, but is this idea that God is all about his glory and this, is that in any way tied to the Platonism, or is that something separate?
Yeah, God has to be the maximally great being. So in Platonism, everything has to be to maximize that greatness. And so while the world doesn't give God glory, it reflects God's glory to the maximal extent. It's maximally great being theology. So that's Platonism.
Okay, and like in the same extent, like we might, you know, we might ascribe glory to God, right? Like, oh, you know, oh, pray, you know, but God is actually not. I mean, God doesn't really receive that, or I
He
mean,
cares
it
about
doesn't
it.
have any change to God, though, right? In other words,
Well,
that
they would say that there's no effect on God. God
right.
can't be affected. He's immutable and he's impassible, and he can't. Being affected creates relations. It means God's not pure actuality. He's not pure simplicity.
Okay, so when the scriptures tell us this or that pleases God or displeases God, all that is what, anthropomorphic language to, or something?
Right. Some will say it's like a positional change. So while God is immutable and immovable, it'd be like me walking away from a pole. The pole is stationary, but the farther we get away from the pole,
Holy shit.
Hold on. Mute yourself, Odin, please.
Okay.
they'll say you could describe that positional change. While the pole is constant, the farther you move away from it, you could describe that relationship in that sense. And that those are what it means by God gets angry, is people depart from a standard that's immutable. Well, God himself does not change, is not affected, and is perfectly immutable and simple.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, William or Brojo, please, if you have questions, feel free. And Balthasar, I'm not sure.
I have no idea where you're at in this conversation.
Oh, if you have a question related to Platonism, that'd be most, you know, ideal. But open theism or how it relates, or any of these questions about God is, you know.
You like fishing?
No, I've never caught a fish.
That's all I had.
Well, it doesn't sound like you'll make a very good disciple then, Chris. You know,
It's so
we got
boring.
to.
It's like people who watch football. I just don't get it.
I got to teach you from scratch to fish for men. It sounds like
you just sit there with a pole, like, oh, okay, I could be doing something else right now.
Unless
You
you're
have
hungry.
to try fly fishing. Fly fishing, that's not like that. So, yeah.
I guess it's all based on necessity.
Well, whenever we're not limited in the topics, one day I want to get with you and ask you how you arrived at the not flat Earth, sorry, young Earth. It's not even close to the same thing.
Oh man.
Yeah, the young Earth. Well, that was a big deal because I mean I know how I got there.
Was Plato a flat earther? Do we know?
When you say young Earth, how old are you saying?
Young Earth is what I meant to say.
I think Aristotle believed the world was a perfect sphere. I haven't been able to track down that source though, and so that it's what I've heard, but haven't been able to track down a primary source on it.
Again, I meant to say young. Seriously.
Right. Well, yeah. So I threw out two arguments to our friends the other night, and they uh, yeah, I mean, it's understandable that you can't just throw out arguments and expect everyone to have answers. But I'd carbon-14 in diamonds. Carbon-14 is undetectable at 50,000 years. And so if you're finding carbon-14 in diamonds, that's probably the maximum age of those diamonds. You find carbon-14 in dinosaur fossils. You find soft dinosaur tissue as well. That puts upper limits in the thousands of years rather than in the millions. And they don't have an explanation for how soft tissue can survive this long. They've done experiments. They've done experiments with iron, saying that iron extends the life cycle, but that doesn't answer all the problems with nuclear decay and with just normal biological decay.
Okay, because I was laughed at today, as a matter of fact, because I brought up this issue about, because someone made the claim that these dinosaurs were so many billions of years ago or whatever it was, millions probably, and it's been so many years since the dinosaur, and I asked about the soft tissue and they just kind of laughed it off, and I don't know science and this and that, and honestly, I didn't. I'm not aware of the arguments. I did look up an article and it showed one scientist was talking about the collagen is an issue for the same reasons. But anyways, yeah.
Yeah, so I followed this issue from day one. I said, this is the issue. This will show whether the evolutionists are honest, dishonest. And you saw their instant reaction. Their instant reaction was disbelief in all the forums. They're saying, oh, this is not true. It's not accurate. Then they claim contamination. All of this stuff is not original material. This is filled. They had to back off of that position. And now they're onto a new position that iron is a hardening substance and magically allows this tissue to last millions of years. This is not part of their model. Their model in no way would have predicted these findings, but they're in panic mode, trying to look for any excuse to reconcile it. And it's interesting to watch them backtrack on things that they were very hard and fast about, laughing at people, thinking the creationists who thought this was original biological material, being scolded and scorned upon and laughed at, and now they're backtracking. And you see they don't have intellectual honesty, and so it seems to me when I interact with these people on this issue that they'll make claims like, oh, the iron preservatives, because there was one lab test in a controlled scientific setting in which some biological materials lasted a little bit longer when injected with iron in a 2-year experiment. That means that extends the lifespan of these dinosaurs from the thousands of the years to the millions of the years. Original biological material. It's like I think you guys are desperate. This is not rational. It is not a rational position.
Well, and what was the other question or point?
Well, the carbon-14 in diamonds, which
the carbon-14
limit on the diamonds at 50K.
How old do they say diamonds are then?
Millions of years, it's a million-year process. But we have diamonds that we could create today in the matter of, I don't know, hours. There's artificial manufacturing of diamonds today. Right. But they want steady processes. They don't want catastrophe. Catastrophe throws question on the dates of things. You see the Mount St. Helens explosion create a mini Grand Canyon, through hydraulic sorting, creating layers upon layers, creating trees that span multiple stratas like you'll find in the Grand Canyon.
So, Dean, how come you're so dishonest about this?
He's popping in with multiple things again.
Or any evolutionists in the crowd here?
Yeah, I'm an old earther, but sorry.
I just switched over to my laptop. So were you asking?
Why? Well, I'm wondering why all the evolutionists are so dishonest when it comes to this question about the carbon-14 in diamond bubbles and the soft tissue in the dinosaur discoveries that are supposedly last for millions of years.
So the preservation of the tissue, like they don't have like a set explanation for that yet, because there are multiple different factors they have to take into consideration. This is why they have to test it so much to see which particular situation. Like for example, the guy that you brought up earlier, right? He's critiquing the whole situation, and he's putting up another like slight possible explanation as to how it got preserved. But they, as far as I know, they haven't like settled on one particular thing.
Were you saying when you said that, when you say how it was preserved, do you mean how it was preserved for millions of years?
Yeah.
So one thing I find very interesting is when the soft dinosaur tissue was first discovered, there's been a lot of discoveries of soft dinosaur tissue since then. But Jack Horner was the scientist who had access to it, and Bob Enyart, he got together $20,000. He called him up and he said, "I'll give you a $20,000 grant for whatever you want if you carbon date this soft tissue find." And Jack Horner said, "No, I won't, because I'll just give ammunition to creationists."
I mean, technically, as I said, like it's been preserved, and so I mean, what do you call it again? The amount of time that it takes for the carbon-14 to leave the tissue, right? If no carbon-14 is leaving the tissue, right?
No,
and you
hold on,
date that, it's going to be
Carbon-14 has it's undetectable at 50,000 years. It has a half-life of what, 6,000 years or something like that.
Yeah, but that's why they don't want to test it, and I understand that. I must say that this
no, they are testing it. They're testing it. It's just that they don't know. It's just that they don't know, like, how it was preserved under those conditions. You can't recreate those conditions like that.
No, the thing is, if you carbon date something, so if you find something, it will be so you will find carbon in everything. So what you find will not be more than, I think perhaps it's a little bit higher now. It's like 30,000 years or something, up to 50. But you will if the result will be in that range, and that is a problem. Because
and
you will just if you find something, you will just prove it. Also, if it is older, you will prove it into that range, and I think that's.
And one thing they do is they take readings.
They don't only use carbon-14 as a way to date these things.
Right, they reject it offhand because it doesn't go along with their presuppositions. But what they do is they carbon date what they consider carbon dead things, like coal, and coal has carbon in it. And they'll say, "Oh, this should be carbon dead." And so the readings that we have, we'll create that as a baseline. If anything meets that baseline, although we're detecting carbon-14, we're going to call it carbon dead.
Yeah, but they will find carbon in this, and the problem is,
dude, everything has carbon in it. Like we're carbon-based life forms. You know what I'm saying? Like, huh?
How old are the diamonds that have this carbon-14 in it, trapped inside?
I don't know, because diamonds
are they older than are they older than how long carbon can exist?
That your question doesn't make sense.
Diamonds are not produced under time. They are produced under pressure.
Hold on. Not all diamonds have the same age, and they use radiometric dating for non-organic stuff.
Well, the thing is with diamonds, they have carbon bubbles. There's carbons that are trapped in the diamonds, and when we date that carbon, we get positive. We find carbon-14, so that puts the upper limit on the age of these diamonds at 50,000 years.
Yeah, but they find that in the bubbles. They don't find that in the diamonds themselves.
That's right. Yes, but diamonds, the hardest substance known to man, how does the carbon get there? It puts an upper age limit on the diamond of 50,000 years.
Yeah, but what I don't understand about this, because diamonds are carbon, so then it must be possible to.
There are different types of
find
carbon.
Another decay rate in the carbon and diamond are the same. So I don't know about this thing, but I know a little bit about
a
chemistry.
diamond isn't carbon-14, is it?
It's just hardened carbon. But if you find an iPad encased in a solid diamond, that's going to put an upper age limit on that diamond of 10 years.
But I don't think diamonds are produced by age. It's pressure. So they are produced.
Right, but these diamonds are dated by evolutionary methods to millions of years old.
No,
Really?
they're not.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Diamonds are not dated with biological methods.
I never claimed they were. You're not listening to me.
You said evolutionary. Evolution is in biology. Geology is different than biology.
No, we're not going to be pedantic.
I'm not being pedantic. I'm just telling you how it is.
Oh, offense. You took offense.
No, your whole worldview
totally,
that you're describing to is evolutionistic.
Yeah.
And so I could use those terms and we all understand what I'm talking about. So we're not going to be pedantic.
But I believe in
nothing to do with evolution. Like you go into a geology class, they're not going to teach you about evolution.
But so if I Google evolution of the stars, I won't find textbooks about astrophysics.
But I have to. Yeah, I mean, I'm an old earther, but I totally agree. If there is a diamond and that is supposedly to be millions of years old, and if they find carbon-14 in that is younger, then something is wrong. That's just. I mean, but I don't.
Right.
I
this
don't
is
know
why
if that is okay.
The dating of carbon-14 is faulty, or something's faulty.
No.
Hey,
carbon-14 only date back about 60,000 years.
Yeah, but most kind of dating like that's not always 100% accurate. You do know that, right?
To me, it sounds like more that someone have dated some diamonds, and then some young earther have found carbon in it, and then suddenly all the theory about the old Earth is wrong. So I think what is wrong is the theory about those diamonds. You know,
nothing is wrong with, because as I said, right, carbon dating is used on organic tissue.
You're not understanding the point.
You don't use that. I mean, I get what you're saying. You're trying to say. You're saying, oh, you know,
if
since
you find
the bubble. It's a bubble in the diamond, right? The carbon tested in that diamond, it reaches the limit of the half-life as it pertains to the carbon dating, right? Carbon-14 dating, right? Then therefore the diamond must be younger than millions of years. Now, what I'm trying to express to you is that the way how diamonds are formed, it's not that it just takes time, because not all diamonds have the same age. Right? Like, as you can see, we can make diamonds in like no time. It's just that if the proper conditions are met, a diamond will be made.
Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is that all the dating that we do when it comes to like carbonating and stuff, it's about the atoms. Sometimes when you actually measure the atoms, it can be a bit fucked up. All forms of dating like that can be a bit fucked up. It's not 100% accurate. People get that a bit confused. That's the problem.
Yeah, no dating is 100% accurate. I'm not making
Here's the thing.
argument.
I'm not trying to say the world's 6,000 years old either, though. That's not fucking true.
If you find an iPad encased in diamond, that the max age of that diamond's about 10 years.
It probably is, because we can make them in a laboratory now. We can grow diamonds.
Right.
You just need shitloads
can
of pressure.
date it by what is in it. And since diamond's a really hard substance and it's really hard to get an iPad in there, it's not contamination.
So what's the gist of this conversation anyway? We're trying to say the world's 6,000 years old or some shit. I don't know.
We were throwing out a couple of evidences of young creation.
I'm sorry about this, Chris.
There's no young Earth creation, dude. That's just bullshit. You read it in the Bible.
No, you can't just jump to that.
Well, I can't because if that's like me saying, you know,
oh, here we go.
There's a myth in a book, or I read a book, so therefore it's true. No,
the
reason why
getting that from the Bible, you didn't.
No,
I'm
not just saying
into the conversation.
Hold on, I'm not just saying specifically Bible. What I'm trying to say is the reason why we know the world is not that young is because there's collaborating evidence that's overwhelmingly points to that fact. If let's just say you're on an island and it was just a Bible and some other guy with a measuring stick, then you could argue about it, right?
Oh, it was my mistake. I forgot. I didn't.
I don't think they're saying the Earth is like only like 10,000 years old, but they are saying it is much younger than what scientists would say. So what we're talking, guys, like 100,000 years? You're saying?
That's what I was guesstimating, and I was being generous.
Oh wow, that's still young though for the Earth. I mean, it's a planet. It's not like
right. But see, you jumped in saying you knew where we were going with it.
Oh, well, you said 100,000. That's still young Earth.
I mean, if you want to know the age of the Earth, like biology is not the place to look.
No, it's not.
I'm just saying.
Oh. It's actually space.
Okay, so
it's actually not even Earth. That proves the world is that old. It's actually space.
Ironic. Are you hearing this? This is why it's not useful to engage in these discussions. So when you say something that uncontroversial, like if you find carbon-14 in diamonds, that puts the upper age of that diamond at 50,000 years, and then people just don't understand, and then they make a claim like, "Oh, you can't biologically date diamonds." They just don't understand. It's you're interacting with people who seems unwilling to understand the point.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know how biology is going to experiment on this iPad in the diamond, and come up with thousands of years.
This is my normal experience dealing with this issue with they're fanatics. They don't care about your arguments.
Are you calling me a fanatic, dude?
He wasn't talking fanatic. I do.
You call me a fanatic?
Why? I believe so. Yes.
Why?
Well,
because
you just rewind the tape and listen to yourself.
The substantiating
arguments. You made some bold claims with zero evidence.
I didn't make any bold claims at all.
You did. Just rewind the tape.
All right, then. Do you know what the redshift is when it comes to looking at astronomy? You mentioned astronomy, right? Yeah. Okay. So how do we know suns are far away and other ones are close to us? How do we know that?
Well, there's a lot of assumptions that go into these redshift calculations.
No, there isn't at all. You can't just make it up.
Listen, we're done here. I'm done dealing with you people. You can't interact in an intellectual way.
Dude, intellectual. That's the problem. Yeah, I agree. We can't interact in an intellectual way because you're not intellectual.
Dude, look, man. If you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here, man.
Look at this.
Nah, he's gone, man. Sorry about that, Chris. I didn't know it was going to open a big ass can of worms. I just because I'm younger.
Every time. You make an argument, they misunderstand your argument, they can't repeat back to you your argument, and then they call you an idiot for your claims. It's like,
all right, so Chris, if you don't mind. So Odin, I don't think Odin is actually trying to be dishonest or whatever.
I don't think he understands the argument.
Right. Now, so can we work that out with Odin, because he'll work it out. So what is Odin not understanding?
He says
based on his question,
biological dating techniques on a rock, basically, which that's not the argument. We're not saying we're dating the rock using biological means. We're dating the carbon that's trapped in the rock, which gives us an upper age on the limit of the rock because it's encased in that rock. It'd be like finding a fossil of a hammer. The upper age of that is, mankind. There's fossilized miners' hats with lights that are completely petrified. That puts an upper age on that fossil, the strata it's found in, the rocks it's encased.
Right, 100 years or something.
Yeah, like 100 years. We could date things by the things that are found in them. Is
right? Okay, Odin. How do you respond to that?
Scientists date is the opposite, where you date the things. You date the things around it. You date the dirt around it. You date the layers around it, and you can tell how old something is based on the location of the layer, based on the location of which layer you find it in.
Well, okay, but how is it? Okay, so let's say they date it that way, and it sounds like they've come up with a date of millions of years. Now, since we do find a bubble of carbon-14 in it that has a max life of 50,000 years, we know that diamond is not a million years old, right?
No, that doesn't say anything about the diamond itself.
I don't see. This is what doesn't make sense.
They measure.
How?
Hold
like,
on, hold on.
okay,
Right.
What
about the time for that? What about the time for that to form around the carbon-14?
Now, let me ask you this though: if you saw a photograph of me holding a newspaper with today's date, how old is that?
First.
How old is that news? How old is that photograph?
Let me finish my point first before you continue. What they're dating is the content in the bubble. That's what they dated. They didn't date the diamond itself, right? You can't.
They don't have to date the diamond itself. No, they don't have to date the diamond itself because the diamond enclosed in the forming of itself this carbon-14, right?
Ironic. What, man? Why are you so excited and you're not allowing Odin to finish his point, man? You ask him to make his point, but you don't let him to finish it. You just jump all over his ass.
Well, because he's ignoring the point. He doesn't seem to be even grasping it.
I'm answering your question. You might not like the answer, but that's how it works with these guys.
No, okay. So you said scientists do it this way. I'm wondering. I mean, it seems obvious that something that's trapped within something at its formation isn't possibly going to be older than the age determined, by that trapped thing, right? How could it? How could that carbon last inside the diamond so long?
Because it's trapped. It's literally trapped.
It's radioactive decay, though. It doesn't matter if it's trapped. When we're measuring,
not trapped. I mean, the radio decay isn't trapped.
And so when we're carbon dating something and we're figuring out the age of the carbon, it's radioactive decay that we're measuring, which happens whether or not it's trapped. It's not how much carbon has escaped from somewhere. It's how decayed is that carbon from its initial state. So it'd be like having a watch that's encased in a diamond. So the watch is always moving.
No, but that's my point. That's why I said, like, not all diamonds have the same age, right? Diamonds are formed under specific.
Now, what you're saying is to me, Odin, is that I can be holding 100-year-old newspaper with a picture of like today's newspaper in it. But the photo, the actual photo that contains the actual paper that the photo is on is inherent in the photo that's this old is the picture of yesterday's newspaper, right? So you're saying, I don't care about yesterday's newspaper in that photo. We're talking about the photo itself is 100 years old.
No, but that's my point, right?
No, that's just how scientists. That's how they date it.
No. Man, God dang,
dude. My point is, this is why they don't use that one method to date like everything. They use different dating methods for different things, right?
Why is that again?
Because not all methods work the same for everything.
I think it might be that not all methods get the desired results they want.
It's not about desired results. It's about getting the right results. Yeah,
well, that
like
doesn't
if you're wiring a house, right, and you realize that the way how you're wiring the house is shit, then to get the result that you want, right, you come up with a different strategy in order to figure out the wiring of that house.
I don't know. I don't think that. I don't see that evident in what's going on. Like, because when somebody that's a young earther will present these, reasonable objections, all of a sudden, these guys are jumping around like, they can't, they don't stay in one place and argue because, you know, it's like, I don't see it as honest.
So what to me is what I would find dishonest is when we say, hey, you know, science, when we say scientists, people are including like, you know,
Swallow first. We don't want you choking.
I know, and that's what I'm trying to do first.
Yeah, just
So,
swallow.
when you talk about biology, screw you, bro, Joe. When you talk about biology and dating biological specimens, you talk about the stuff that you talk about stuff relating to that. When you talk about geology, you talk about stuff that's relating to that. You talk about physics, you talk about stuff relating to that. Right? Like, you know, saying, hey, the dating of or yeah, the dating of a particular animal, right? That disproves something that they found in physics, right? Or something that they determined in physics. Like, that's not how this works. You use physics to disprove physics. You use biology to disprove biology, and so on.
Okay, can I ask you a question then? Really, this is serious. So if
Go
I
ahead.
give you a pic, if I hand you a photograph, if I handed you a photograph, and it had a newspaper in the photograph, you know, I snapped it on January 1st, 2019, and I give you that photo, just naturally, on what date would you suppose that photo was made, and why would you think so?
It would have been made in the 20th century. I mean, I don't necessarily understand your question as it relates.
No, you're holding a picture. You're holding a picture, and it has in the picture is the front cover of a newspaper, you know, from the January 1st, 2019, you know, a couple days, you know, New Year's Day. So now, okay, so but I give you that picture, and now I'm asking you when you think that picture was made, created, and I want to know why you think that.
I mean, I wouldn't know. I don't have the material, or I don't have the knowledge and the freaking equipment to test the picture, the actual like photograph itself, to tell the exact date in terms of how old it is.
I know, right? So, but still, does that prevent you from knowing how old the picture is then? What you're saying is you don't have any way of determining on what date even that photo was made.
I mean, if I really wanted to, I probably could. If I put the effort in, I could go and learn.
I mean,
all that.
First of all, let's assume though that I'm handing you that photo on the 1st of January. Now, in that case, if you looked at the photo and it's January 1st, 2019, and you're looking at the photo and it has a picture of a newspaper from earlier that came out that day, and now I hand you that picture, what would you know anything about how on what date, therefore how old that picture is, the photo itself is, and if so, on what basis would you determine that information?
I mean, if it's taken on January 1st and you showed it to me today.
Well, I'm not. Hold on. I didn't say it was taken January 1st. I'm just handing you the photo. What I'm saying is on the photo is, the day I'm handing it to you is the 1st of January, and I'm handing you this photo, and it's a picture of a newspaper that was printed that day with today's date on it. And then now I'm going to ask you the question, Odin, how old is that photo? On what date was this photo created, and why do you think so?
Okay, so the photo would have been. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't understand your question.
Okay.
So
how old is that photograph?
Hold on. Let me repeat the question just to make sure I understand it. Right.
Let me throw out a real quick example that might be easier. You find a living hamster encased in diamond, and the diamond's solid. How old's that diamond?
most likely within the next 100. Well, most likely within
There's a
the
living
lifespan of
hamster.
the drone.
You
Yeah,
see the
most
hamster running
likely
around
within-
like a hamster will, encased in this diamond. How old's the diamond?
It's most likely going to be sometime within the age limit of how long hamsters live. So whether that's 10 years,
He would have died.
5 years.
He
No,
would.
it would
I mean,
have been
I
pretty
know,
quick. You'd have run
but
out
I'm
of
just saying.
The upper
No,
limit's
but I'm just saying.
like a week. Yeah, oxygen. Yeah, days. A day maybe. A day old
It'll
diamond.
be like a couple minutes.
Right,
It'll be a
but
couple minutes.
what I was trying to point out, Odin, is that when I handed you the photo, you should look at the photo and see that that photo was produced on this date, especially since this is the date we're seeing. But if I apply that to how you're answering, you're saying I have no idea how old this photo is. I mean, I don't know how to measure it. But you're denying what you're looking at in the photo that was created at the same time. So you should instantly say, of course, it was created today.
Your question is dishonest or malformed, right? One, you said when you take a picture, it doesn't necessarily mean the photo is made immediately. Like, I don't know. You don't tell me if it's like one of those like quick Polaroid photos or anything like that, right? And so that's what I'm saying. Having access to that information.
I covered that because
hold on. Not having access to that information, right? I would have to actually test the photo, right? To see how old that photo is and how, basically telling me how long it's been in existence and how long you've taken that picture ago. How long picture? That's why I like to understand your question.
Well, I'm amazed that you couldn't know automatically that picture was no older than the newspaper that it contains a picture of.
I mean, I wouldn't know that because, as I said, right, you didn't give me all the information. The most I could do.
Okay, this is what I don't understand. Why isn't it self-evident? Why isn't it self-evident that
because
picture
lack of information? That's why you test.
I'm sorry.
Because there's a lack of information. That's why you test things.
Odin, come on, man.
Yeah, Odin. Yeah, unless that photo was photoshopped, it's a day.
Dude, come on, man.
Right. I mean, are you trolling me or what? I mean,
I'm really not trolling you because that's why I was having issues answering your question.
Okay. I mean,
the way how you asked the question didn't make sense.
Right. This explains why you can't imagine how old a diamond is that contains an iPad.
That's why you test. You test.
No, I get it. I get it. I wouldn't need to test. I wouldn't need to test it. I'd know that it wasn't any older than iPad.
Method. No, but what we're discussing is the testing methods, not the actual like iPad, right?
No, but
talking about carbon-14.
You were complaining about biology or something.
Huh?
You were complaining that we were trying to apply biology or something to a rock.
Yeah, the stuff, the way how you would test tissue or organic matter, right? You wouldn't use that same method to test rocks.
Yeah, that is.
I understand that, but that's irrelevant to if something
it's relevant because you guys are like mixing the shit up, and I have to clear that up for you. Evidently, you didn't.
Look at if something gets formed and then a 1901 penny is trapped in it. I think I know that thing isn't any young, or there's a limit on how old that could be, right? It can't be older than 1900 years, right?
Dude, you can find one of those pennies, right, and create an artificial crystal, or well, they're not artificial crystals. It's technically a crystal. Create a crystal around it, and go to any person who has no idea what the hell you did and say, "Hey, I found this penny in this crystal." right? And they'll be like, "Holy shit, how did that happen?" Are you saying that pennies have been around for like thousands of years or millions of years?
No, they would do the
in order
logical
to-
thing and say the upper age of that crystal is the date on that penny.
So
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I mean, so I mean, the logical thing to do would be to test it.
No, but
okay, Balthasar, what do you
problem
You
here,
test the crystal to see
the
how old
problem
it
is,
and you can
Yeah, let
determine that.
Balthasar go. Let Balthasar go here.
now that the problem is, I agree with you fully, Irenic. I mean, if that is the case, there's no doubt about it. I will be a young earther at once. But there are like dating. This is very complicated. So I don't. If I I use the word contamination, now
There's an
you will
echo.
go
I'm
off.
sorry. There's an echo.
But it is really a problem with C14, and C14 is made from nitrogen. So the reason why you use biologically dating is so C14 is made from mainly nitrogen and some cosmic rays. So a living animal take that in, so then you can, and it's like, I don't know the upper range there, but you have two problems. I can imagine two problems with this diamond dating. One is contamination, because these are really really sensitive stuff, and the second is that diamond also contains a lot of nitrogen. So could be the case that some nitrogen is reacting with something in the diamond. So that's why I don't want to, like, I think that with the soft dino tissue, I would never say that has to be wrong. I just think the explanation given with the iron, it's a stupid explanation, and I just leave it open. So I would
Here's
never
our
say,
rational
like,
guy.
sorry.
Right.
Yeah, no, but it really. So, the thing is, I don't know enough about this, but I don't think. Yeah, it's a good evidence. It's a good, very strong evidence for something is going wrong with the dating thing. But that's not
No,
what's.
nothing is wrong with it. Nothing is wrong with it. It's just that they have certain
Oh.
types of dating have limits, and so you can't use them to date. You can't use it to date other stuff. Like you can't date
carbon
Hold on,
14 is like 50,000 years or something.
Hold on. Can you use carbon 14 to date a star to determine how old a star is?
No, of course not. I say it's 50,000 years. Carbon 14, yeah, it's 50,000 years or something like that.
My point is that yes, you can repeat that word to day one. Simple fact of the matter is that they use different dating methods for different stuff. And so saying
but that doesn't explain anything. So what you have to argue is something is, there must be contamination, or there is some other. I mean, it is a problem if you find.
So if you want to debate the age of the Earth, then what you should be talking about is whatever issues that might arise with radiometric dating, for example, right? Whatever they use to date the actual Earth itself, right? If you see a flaw in that particular thing, like, then yes, you attack it. But using something that they use to date organic matter, right? Like, it doesn't work for inorganic matter.
No, but the thing is that if they find something that contains C14, it cannot be older than 50,000 years. That's just how it is. So that's why they talk about contamination, because C14 is created all the time, and these are very, very, these are molecules can contaminate something, or you have some other things, because diamonds they have a lot. They have nitrogen in them.
That's like telling an electrician to use his meter to test for leakage from a pipe.
No, it sounds to me,
That's
Odin, like
basically what you're saying.
here's what it sounds like to me, Odin, is like you're gonna apply these certain types of measurements to the diamond because it's inorganic, right?
Yes.
Some radiometric dating or something. And
Yeah,
so
that's one of the methods they use.
So I don't see how you don't see the problem if that radiometric dating process comes up with millions of years, and yet inside this millions of year old thing is something that can only possibly be 50,000 years old at the
No, but
most.
my point is that that's why I said not all diamonds are the same age. If they can test diamonds
Okay,
that
so
would probably
I guess the question is, do we have a method of radiometric dating that we can do on an inorganic substance containing an organic substance, in which, when tested, we come to the same age?
hold on, repeat that?
Well, if
Are you asking me if there's a method that we can use to test
okay, I'm
both the
thinking in
diamond
this case,
whatever that's trapped in the diamond to see if whether or not they are the same age? Is that what you're
okay.
asking?
Now, it seems to me that if we apply a true capable measuring to the inorganic substance of the diamond, we shouldn't come up with any measurement different than, in this case, if this diamond contains an inorganic bubble or an organic bubble, in which we can measure that what's in the bubble also separately and with a different device because it's organic material. Now, it seems to me that the measuring systems ought, in this case, come up with the same time period of creation. Doesn't it seem rational to you? I mean, do you understand what I'm thinking? Like, if we date the diamond and the thing inside are created at the same time, I think we can assume that. So our dating methods of the outer material, however methods we use, and the dating of the inner material, however methods we use, ought to come up with the same time. If they don't, then something's wrong with our measuring on some end or both. That
So,
make sense?
I mean, I kind of get what you're saying, right? But you can't. It goes back to my dumb analogy, right? Like you can't use the same tools on everything.
Well, that's why I was trying to avoid it, because I'm granting that. So we use the proper tool on the diamond and we use the proper tool on the bubble, right? Now, why shouldn't those come to the same age? If everything's, if we're measuring correctly, why don't the measurements match?
I'll have to read into this specific diamond issue. Hey, Chris, can you post me the links that you have for those?
Yeah, I could do that. The common response is just as Baltasar was saying. They claim that either carbon was created in some way through nuclear decay, or there's contamination. Is how they try to combat this. It's also interesting that we could carbon date the soft tissue, and we could carbon date dinosaur fossils and get estimates in the thousands of years using carbon dating. That means there's carbon found in these things.
Wow, how could that be if they're millions of years old? That doesn't
They
make
have
sense.
to claim contamination. That's why the diamonds are a little bit better than the bones, because diamonds are less contaminatable. And you're going to find carbon in everything the world over. It's a massive problem for evolutionists. That's why they do things like they figure out a level of carbon that they consider carbon dead, but they're still detecting carbon.
Let's see here. Yeah, I'm gonna look into that specific thing.
That whole thing must be based on assumptions they're making and throwing into all this crap. This is what I don't appreciate getting laughed at. I don't think When I don't
They
think
created that.
have anything stronger than what I got with God.
I mean, see, this is the thing. Like you see these things as like being incompatible.
I'm gonna drop a link
When
to
in
the,
reality, like a lot of these biologists, a lot of these scientists are Christians. Like, and they don't see any incompatibility whatsoever because they don't operate under like any particular assumption as to how God would create. God would create. You hear what I'm saying? Like that's why they don't have any conflicts. You, however, are operating under a particular presupposition, right? I mean, I didn't assume any of this. Looked into it myself, and then I based what, you know, I go with what seems to make the most sense to me and what conforms to reality.
No, but that is a good argument. So my argument is also, you know, I'm not working in a carbon dating laboratory or with science. So, but I know enough. Also, very strong Christian. I don't know them, but you know, there is a lot of, and they don't. I have to trust them. So I cannot prove anything, but I just have to rely on that those people can name some famous, you know, some biologist or geologist so that they are honest. So that's where my
I mean, dude, the fathers of the
place.
scientific method are like all Christians. Like,
or some kind of Platonist most, you know.
you're trying to start some shit. Saying that, are you saying that Christian scientists are Platonists? That's what you're saying, Balthazar?
Some people draw the scientific method
Yes.
back to. Some people draw the scientific method back to Aristotle.
No, but I really think that the soft tissue, that is really interesting. It's really, really interesting, and that's a problem because that is it's mind-boggling how these tissues can be like this. That's and this explanation with iron conserving it and so on. No, I don't think that is.
The hematite.
Yeah, no, I don't. There must be something else going on there. But
okay, I posted in the side link a spreadsheet of original biological material that have been found. And so you'll see that there's like 100 line items of different original biological material that we've found. And it gives the ages of the supposed ages.
I'm going to bookmark that so I can go through them. Okay.
All right, well, let's go back to Platonism.
Yeah, we have a Platonist there. Nicholas, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Oh, shit. Nick is a Platonist? I didn't know that.
I don't know if I'm a Platonist. I don't even know what the definition of Platonism is anymore.
No, but I really think most Western European people are like we don't know how much Platonists we are. You know, I think so.
Yeah, Nietzsche says Christianity is Platonism for the people. And I think the entire Western mindset is dominated by Platonism. So you grab any random Westerner, they're a Platonist.
Yeah.
What's the definition of Platonism we're working with here?
Yeah, that's a good question, Nicholas. That's the issue.
Yeah, the definition is where you see God as the ultimate cause, first cause, unmoved mover. You see the spiritual realm as not intertwined with the physical realm. The spiritual realm is ethereal realm that's above the material realm. And you see the idea, escapism is a big part of it. A lot of these Christians, you die and go to heaven. Your eternal abode is in heaven. There's different conceptions that they ascribe to that, but in origin, it's Platonistic. And just the conception of God as, the supreme being imaginable.
Okay, well, as far as God being the uncreated creator of all things and being the most perfect being imaginable, I would be a Platonist according to that. I'm certainly wouldn't. I would not go with the escapist avenue. I don't believe in a heaven.
Yeah.
And there was the second one there that I thought was iffy.
The divide between the spiritual and the physical.
Yeah, I don't know what you mean by that. I'm a dualist, so I believe there are immaterial objects and material objects. I think they causally interact. So I don't know what you mean specifically, but I may or may not fall in that category.
Yeah, so for example, like people claim God can't have a location because he's spirit, whereas the Israelite idea is the spirit of God was hovering over the face of the earth in Genesis. And so in the Israelite religion, spirits can have location, spirits can have form. They inhabit the material universe, and there's not a divide between the material universe and the spiritual. It's all one and the same. It's just categorization of what exists is the differential. Whereas in Platonism, the spiritual is like a separate realm outside of the material.
Well, I would say that I have no problem with spirits having physical forms, and that would be separate from the issue whether or not there are material objects and immaterial objects. If anybody cares what I think.
Yeah, no, it's
we care about what you think. Just because you're Canadian, that doesn't mean we don't care about what you think.
Just
Canadian
because you like the
matter.
You haven't jumped the shark yet.
Oh, that's tempting.
I guess I mean
there was
I do
no
have a
heaven
question.
in Platonism.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
What is heaven in Platonism?
Heaven's a spiritual realm that's different than the material world. So our goal in Platonism is to escape the material world, escape the change, and go to a more perfect ethereal place. In Neoplatonism, this is the realm of the forms, the realm of the ideas, and which we approximate unchanging. The material world is this lesser world, and once those forms of the ideal change, they descend into the material world. In Christianity, this this ideal world, this realm of the forms, is reimagined as like a spiritual heaven. The modern Christians don't quite conceptualize it the same way that Plato did or Plotinus, where it's a realm of unchanging. Some Christians will. They'll say, when we go to heaven, time will be no more.
Okay. And
so
then
you're
Nick,
like a rock. You just go there and you just like stay still. You don't move. You don't do anything.
so Nick, did you say you don't believe in an afterlife or heaven or something?
I don't believe in heaven. I believe in a series of afterlives. Yeah.
Cool.
And I wouldn't consider that escapism.
Okay, so if I believe that we're gonna live again on a new earth, essentially something like we have now. I mean, that's how I envision it. But so that's not a Platonic idea? That wouldn't be even though it's like an afterlife kind of thing?
The new heaven and the new earth?
Yeah.
No, we're still occupying the same realm in the new heaven and new earth.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like Paul thought that Jesus raised with a spiritual body, and he interacted with people. They touched his hands. It's a different category rather than a different kind.
Yeah.
It's not an otherness.
Yeah, he says we are raised a spiritual body, though, right? So it's not a spirit without a body. Yeah.
Well, you have to understand how he's using the word spiritual. In his idea, the word spiritual is just something that's more permanent, something that doesn't decay necessarily. but it still inhabits the same. We'll still walk around. We could high five and go to McDonald's.
I don't think McDonald's is going to be available in heaven, dude.
I think it'll definitely be available. Definitely.
Yeah, you know this conversation between Dawkins and some Jesuit astrologist. Nicholas, you have seen that, I'm sure. Can you coin
what's the name of the guy? The Jesuit.
A coin or something like that.
Aquinas.
So,
not Aquinas.
No, but he's a pretty good astrologist, or what you call it. So, and he had Dawkins interviewed him, and he then Dawkins asked him about heaven, yeah, and he said, yeah, I will be resurrected. Sorry, not John. Sorry,
are you talking about John Lennox again?
No. He's a astrophysicist. I guess some place in the Vatican. I don't know where they have that, but he was and Dawkins reacted that he because he said, yeah, I will be bodily there, and yeah, what will you do? No, I will play golf and have my gin and tonic. And he was really convinced about it. It's that guy is he's a top scientist, you know. And he was
well, if he can have his gin and tonic, Chris can have his McDonald's, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I know. Why else do they have golden arches?
What is his father? So I'm curious, Nicholas. So did you have some experience changing your view on things, or?
Yeah. George Coignet?
George Coignet, yeah.
I don't think I ever did see that one.
Oh, that's one of the best, and Dawkins is very, very humble, because he's talking with he's 10 times more science. Dawkins is not a scientist.
A peer of his, right? Yeah, that he respects, maybe.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, he's the main figure, and you should watch that. It's in recorded in some cathedral in France, I think. So you had an it was an experiential turn. It was not a philosophical consideration or something like that. Nicholas.
Yeah, the essential part was experiential.
Okay.
It's a long sort of story. I don't know if we want to get into it here.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. I just wanted to know if it was experiential or.
Yeah, it's experiential. Yeah.
Okay.
And Nicholas, would you share the change that Balthasar is alluding to, just for people that don't know?
I used to be a Catholic, or identify as a Catholic, and I no longer do that. For the past year and a half or so, I've just identified as a committed theist, and I do not believe Catholicism is true. I don't believe that Jesus is God. Yeah, I don't have a position in terms of his resurrection or anything. It seems like there's pretty good evidence for that, but even if everything pretty much as described by history were proven to be true, I don't think that would demonstrate Christianity to be true. I think it'd be a really strong argument for it, but I don't think it would necessarily follow. It might be the strongest argument in all of history, though.
God damn it, Nick, you killed the room.
I am the serial killer.
So situation where you see like you see God as the ultimate being where everything comes from. Well, when I say everything, I mean immaterial and material.
Yeah, everything that exists that is not God is caused by God. Yeah, it has its source in God.
Oh, okay, okay. So, would you say that we can perceive this God in its fullest sense or in all its glory, or do we perceive parts of it or experience parts of it, I should say?
I definitely don't think it's possible for us to conceive of God fully. I don't think we have the rational capacity for that. But I think that we can know enough about him. I think we can know the important parts. And I
Okay.
think that the fastest way to that is that we just open ourselves up to God, and God just imprints upon us and just says, "Here you go. There's the knowledge." And it's not like, oh, it's not like I had this experience and now I know. It's just that, oh, I know this because God told me. like I know this not because God told me. God told me I know this kind of deal. Does that make sense?
Damn, that's deep. Um. So, so what is God to you if you were to like as him? Like, is it a spiritual entity? Is it like energy? Is it both? Like, what is that thing to you?
I don't think that God has physicality to him. I think he's just a mind, a free mind, with potentiality. But I mean, I think one could certainly conceive of physical dimensions for God. I'd have to think about that more, but I'm not sure that I have a necessary argument against God having like some sort of a physical body. But I know I'm not part of God's body because I know that I'm not God and God is omniscient. So it would be a contradiction if I were God.
When you say omniscience, like omniscient, what do you mean? You mean like know the future, has access to all aspects of reality?
Yeah, he knows all true propositions, and I'm a Molinist, so I believe that there are future facts. I know God knows what we'll freely do in the future. I also believe that he knows what we would do in a given situation that will never be actualized. But yeah, those aren't necessary. But that's just my position.
Molinists are like agnostics. You're fence sitters. Pick your
What?
side, damn it.
How is a Molinist a fence sitter? I thought we were all the way on one end. What? In what way are we sitting on a fence?
I'm just being a dick.
Okay.
So you think future exists?
No, I don't think it presently exists, but I think there are things that are true about what will happen in the future. Like I think it's true that that I will not live on this earth forever. That I will die one day. I think that's.
So
I think that's true.
you could be open theism wouldn't be a problem then.
Well, you see, I think that God knows all future facts, so I don't think that God changes his mind or learns anything. But like, I wouldn't have necessarily an argument against a open theist.
Why
They would just be saying that there are no future facts.
Why don't you? Why is he not capable of changing? Or why doesn't it change? You have some thoughts there?
It's not about change. It's about him knowing what he will freely do in the future. So it's not that he's constrained, but by what he will freely do in the future. It's just that he's aware of what he will freely do in the future. If he were going to freely do something else, then he would know that instead. It's not like God has to pick Tuesday as his favorite day on Monday, but if he was going to pick Wednesday as his favorite day on Monday, then he would know on Sunday that he was going to pick Wednesday as his favorite day.
It's the Cassandra complex. You know the future, but you're powerless to change it.
Well, you know, you will freely choose in the future, so it's not that you're powerless. You're the one making the decisions. So,
but God,
it's not a powerlessness.
Change it.
No, God knows what will happen in the future because he knows what he'll freely choose. If he were going to freely do something else, then he would have known that.
Right. God couldn't tell me what I'm going to do in the future, and then I can't do something else.
He could if he knew that even telling you that you will not do something else. Yes. But there are a lot of situations where we can't tell somebody something about the future because we'll actually alter what they would do because we're changing the scenario.
Yeah, but inclusive of God telling me what color shirt I'm going to wear tomorrow, he can't tell me what color shirt I am going to wear tomorrow.
He can't tell you what color shirt you're going to wear tomorrow unless him telling you what color shirt you're going to wear tomorrow would not change your decision about what color shirt you're going to wear tomorrow. If it doesn't change your decision, then he can tell you. But I mean, just like if I have a chess strategy, and if I tell you the chess strategy that I'm employing, you're going to work around that. That would be the only difference in me telling you. I mean, if I was 3 moves away and I had you basically sunk or checked or whatever, then I could tell you what I'm doing, and it wouldn't change the future. But there are some situations where knowledge would change the situation. So it's a different situation. So it's not changing the future. It's just the future is dependent on the way things are in a certain sense.
So you're just saying there's no possible world in which God could tell me what color shirt I wear tomorrow, because I will wear a shirt tomorrow. You're just saying that would create a temporal loop, and so therefore it's just not possible and not within the realm of possible things that can happen.
If he tells you what color shirt you would wear tomorrow, would you change your decision just to show you don't know? Yeah. Therefore, it would be logically impossible to tell you what kind of shirt you're going to wear tomorrow because that would change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless there was like a finite set, or he could trick you, or you would end up tricking yourself, where you would make a mistake, and he knows that you're going to do that, then he could tell you. But I mean, if it's going to alter it, then that. Like he could tell you, he could lie to you. For instance, he could say you're going to wear a blue shirt tomorrow, and in his mind he knows you're going to freely choose to wear a green shirt tomorrow just to mess with him.
But that's precluded from the hypothetical.
Right? Yeah. If he's actually telling you, like I think God could tell me what color shirt I'm going to wear tomorrow, because if God told me I was going to wear a particular shirt, I wouldn't change my decision based on that. But you being somebody that would change your decision based on the information you've got, every time he tells you, that alters what the future would be, right? Like I hope you understand that I'm kind of using metaphorical language here. It's not actually changing the future, but it's talking about what he tells you affects the state of affairs.
You're saying that there's no possible world in which God can tell me what color shirt I'm wearing tomorrow.
As long as that would change your decision now. Yeah. Like if him telling you something is going to make you do anything else, then yeah, he couldn't tell you.
Mm-hmm.
You assume that what he's telling you is the truth?
Well, that's
I do, but yeah, that was the hypothetical. As Chris.
Yeah, we assumed that in the hypothetical.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Do you believe open theism because that's what you see in the scriptures? It's not. I mean, you don't have an agenda. Like you have no. Do you have any reason why you'd want open theism to be true as opposed to some other system? I mean, can you just address that publicly?
Do you see me caring quite a lot about things? I don't care. If evolution were true, I wouldn't care. But an old Earth creationism or whatever old Earth evolutionism would cause me to reject the Bible and cause me not to be an open theist. So there's a hierarchy of belief systems, and then you could take out the base and crumble the top.
And rejecting open theism would cause you to reject the Bible as well, right?
Oh, well, the Bible teaches open theism, and so I would be an open theist because I believe the Bible's true. And so
So if you're assuming that the Bible teaches open theism, I just want to point out that's your interpretation. That's not necessarily what's written.
Well, it's the scholarly secular interpretation too. So I got a third party who's pretty neutral, theologically speaking, who's giving me third party confirmation. So there's ways
to scholars are wrong.
It's a possibility, but what it does is it strengthens there's ways to mitigate personal bias.
Right. You're strengthening your position by pointing to relevant experts.
Yeah. So if you point to layman reading, that you could show a common reading. If you point to scholarly readings, you could show expert readings. If you show people how if you need to be consistent in your reading comprehension between various texts, like if you're reading the Enuma Elish in a different way than you're reading the Bible, then you're not being consistent in your special pleading. And so a lot of people come to the Bible and the same phrases that are found in Enuma Elish, like Epic of Gilgamesh says Gilgamesh knows everything. But someone comes across that phrase in the Bible and they'll ascribe Platonic omniscience to God, or Augustinian omniscience, where he knows all true propositions of all time. But these phrases are used very loosely of Marduk. Marduk, whatever Marduk wills will come to pass. Marduk is perfect, it describes Marduk as. And they'll read it as normal, read it in a common sense way. They'll understand that it's limited in scope. It's a rule of thumb. It's hyperbolic based on the context of who Marduk is and what he does. But then they'll come to the Bible and they'll want to read it in an entirely different way, where they prioritize what they call the didactic texts over the narratives. And so being able to show a consistent reading pattern between various texts that are of similar genre is a good way to ensure to limit personal bias, what you're imposing on the text, rather than just reading the text for what it is. So I have bias mitigation techniques when I approach the Bible, and so those are just a few of them. There's others.
Right. So what you're saying is it's not just all bias, but you're not saying you couldn't be wrong.
I'm not saying language is very flexible. It could be the case that some of these phrases actually mean what the Augustinian will claim they mean. I just don't see it in context, and I would default to context being the controlling mechanism for the meaning of short phrases.
Yeah. So
really, my only question is, and I grant this to most people, that I know, but that, I grant, or I believe most people have a sincere desire for where the truth is, and we all have different reasons, why we might go one way or the other when it comes to it. But essentially, as long as somebody, I respect people who really want to know the truth. And that's what's important to them, not whether, open theism is true or this is true, or that, I'll be happy not to be a Pelagian, if that's what I thought the Bible taught, Yeah. But I don't care. I think it teaches it. So I'm going to boldly stand up for it. And I think that's what you're doing. So
couldn't it be the case that God inspiring the Bible, that he gave people what they could understand at that time in history?
Well, then you get into the realm of subjectivity. You depart from actually treating the Bible like a conceptual document that you can understand, and you're free floating in your own mind is what happens.
Free floating. I mean,
okay, so I don't know if you guys were here when I gave the example. Like the early Platonists, the Neoplatonists, they didn't have the Bible. They had Homer, they had the Iliad and the Odyssey, and what they'd do is they'd take these texts and then they'd read spiritual meanings in. There was a whole cottage industry of people taking these ancient texts and reading spiritual meanings into them. And I mean, I guess you could do that. If it works for you, go for it. But I don't see that as treating Homer very honestly. I don't think Homer was talking about a Neoplatonic one, the divine simplicity, when he's talking about Zeus and the pantheon and all these other gods. So I see it as an illegitimate way of approaching the text that, I mean, it's not founded in anything that has substance.
Yeah, but don't you? I mean, if we're talking about Homer or who wrote it, I don't know, but it can be. It's a truth. It's a narrative, but there is some substantial truth there. And then, so instead of just reading, so it has many levels. It has, the fairy tale level for the excitement and the entertainment, and then has different levels.
Yeah.
So so so
All
that they
text is like that. Yeah.
yeah. When you read it in a spiritual, I mean, if you read it in a spiritual, I would say more symbolic or metaphorical or symbolic more. That is not necessary
But
wrong. So like a peasant, peasant, he likes working with earth and never gone to learn anything like some kind of go to school and so on. So he needs, he won't be able to. But it's still so both texts give you the truth, but on a different level. Uh, I don't
do they
see
then at
any
that point,
problem with that.
or are you reading your own truth into it?
No, I'm a product of a society. So, and I live in a society now that are much more advanced. Intellectually, it's just more advanced. We have universities now, and we have the tradition of the philosophers, and so we are advancing. So uh, it's not that, yeah, of course. So I live in this time, but for me, it's the fascinating thing is that although it's like that. Um, you don't give up, or you don't you can the scriptures are just as true from that perspective as from the more, how to say, simple reading of it.
So the thing about the Bible is it's written as advocacy. That's one of the subtitles of Walter Brueggemann's book on the Old Testament, Dispute and Advocacy. Basically, the Bible is written towards the people who are rejecting Yahweh in favor of these other gods. And so it's trying to introduce them to the true God rather than the false gods. It's establishing who God is, fundamentally advocating to these people in that manner. So to take that advocacy text and then read in truths that aren't apparent in the text, that the context doesn't support, that are forced on top of the narrative, that undermines the intent of the text. And the intent of the text is to teach people at face value who the true God is, as opposed to the false gods that they were worshiping.
So yeah, I mean, if you really I guess that's if you really get into it and read the Bible or the Old Testament several times and want to really make things hang together, but there is a lot of stories. So I belong to them. I'm not very good read in the Old Testament, but there is a lot of story that are really so deep and contain so much truth that this big narrative of the competing, the advocacy that you are talking about, that's okay. You can see, when I think about it, I would perhaps see it in Moses' story, like when he's battling with the pharaohs and so on. But there are so many deep, and that's the unbelievable thing, like the story of Cain and Abel. that's just like it has no bottom, those stories.
Yeah.
And to me, that says something about the truth of the text. It's like, so yeah,
It's like a Jordan Peterson approach to the Bible.
yeah, perhaps, yeah, okay, yeah, might be, yeah, no, I think Oscar Peterson a little bit too, but yeah, but you understand what I mean, so
yeah,
so, so
the text is incredibly deep with a lot of different meanings, but they seem to believe a lot of these stories are historical. And so although the story has a narrative, a purpose, a motive, something it's teaching, and underlying themes and interrelationships, usually the overall story is believed to be accurate. It's not mythologized. It's not considered just fables.
yeah, I don't I regard them, I don't regard them as fables, but I don't, story, it's hard to write, get 100 years written in 3 sentences. There's a lot of going on. You can never accurate describe some, history, even if you write 5 books about the Civil War in America. You don't get into you don't have what really happened. So
Mm-hmm.
so
it's interesting. We look at the 4 Gospels. These 4 Gospels are supposed to all cover the same events from the same man, and the way they'll tell these stories vary. Does Jesus talk during his trial? Does he not talk? Or what does he say exactly? What's his exact words on the cross? And they vary, and they vary according to the intent of the author, because the author has an agenda that they're trying to get through the story. It doesn't mean the story's historically inaccurate. It's accurate enough, but their agenda rules the narrative.
yeah. Yes, that's.
But it's not like we would say Jesus didn't exist in their minds. Jesus did exist and did do these things, not necessarily exactly. It's very curated to a specific point.
Yeah.
So I know what you're saying. I just don't think it overrides the text. I wouldn't say that Homer and Homer's audience didn't believe in Zeus. And so when later Platonists will say that Zeus doesn't exist, or they mythologize everything he's saying, I don't think that's accurate to what the audience was supposed to believe from the original story.
Yeah, that is of course a good argument, that they didn't believe in Zeus, so that's why they spiritualized it. But why do God allows, or why, why are we put into that Greek tradition and all this stuff, so we shall not be able, that shall enable us to read the Bible, and then suddenly you have some new historical schools, just like getting the truth of it. It's to me, it's a little bit like, I don't know.
Yeah, the Bible was lost for thousands of years, or not thousands of years, maybe like 1,000 years. Common people did not have access to the Bible, zero access. And so we live in an unprecedented age of a wealth of information. And the question is, why would God allow these things? And that's actually a very common question in the Bible. God, why do you allow this to happen? Why do you allow the wicked to prosper? Why do you do this? And God's taken into account in the Bible, because the Israelite picture of God is not this being that micromanages the universe to his own greatest glory and everything has a purpose or anything like that. God has sovereignty, but God can shirk his duties.
Mm. Yeah.
That's funny. I'm just thinking of a Calvinist, putting that thought around in his head. Yeah.
Right. Job is very powerful against against Calvinism, the point that there's not retributive justice, that things don't happen for a reason. Sometimes things, are God doesn't control and doesn't force to happen. And what God's doing there, engaging in this wager in the future with a menial to see what Job's going to do. It's very powerful stuff. All these accusations against God, the Psalms, just to read the Psalms and just here's what we need to do when we're reading these texts. When Moses is talking to God on Mount Sinai, what is Moses's conception of God? When Satan or the adversary is talking to God in Job, what's the adversary's conception of God? When the psalmist is talking about God, talking to God, what is their conception of God? When the apostles or when the prophets are condemning Israel for unbelief or believing in the wrong attributes of God, what are those ancient Israelites? What is their conception of God? And then how do the prophets respond to those? And you could start getting an accurate picture of their picture of God, and you could start pulling yourself out of the modern mindset.
Yeah, I guess the question comes up, is there any part of Platonism that you see as beneficial to that, as far as Christianity goes, or applying it to anything in the Bible, or any I don't know, is any part of Platonism, consistent with Christianity in different ways, I guess, is one other way to ask it, maybe.
1 sec. Gotta send all my kids to bed. It's 11 at night. Yeah. Anything beneficial? I don't know. Maybe meditation might be, I don't know, beneficial for individuals on an individual level. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think Platonism got people thinking very mechanically and straightforwardly rather than loose conceptualizations, which might have put us on a better path for how we conceptualize the world. So it's a different mindset, and maybe the modern world wouldn't exist in this form with this level of technology if we remained in a Semitic mindset.
That's interesting. Or maybe without Platonism, we would all be living much more peaceful lives with each other or something. If
they were miserably poor. So at the time of Jesus, they had basically GDP per capita of modern day Sierra Leone. These people worked. Give us today our daily bread. They had to daily go out and grind bread. These people were so impoverished, and they lost half their children. Half their children died before coming of age, and the population replacement age was 4 children to 1 woman. So it was miserably impoverished.
Well, speaking of that, it seemed to be when I was in Kenya, I noticed that it seemed like because they had this serious death rate still, or it's like people are you're losing your children is like every day, and even to have a child, you see this phenomenon work out where the adults don't care for the little ones until they've reached that age where, it looks like they're going to make it or something like that. It's you can see it, and it's like for the non-care of these little ones, because it's just so common that they die or something.
I downloaded a paper. Did the ancients care when their children died? It's an interesting paper that covers a couple tombstones. Maybe they're sampling bias because, of course, the only kids that we could, study are the ones with tombstones whose graves we did find.
Yeah.
But there was some care in the ancient world for when their children dies, according to this paper. But it's an interesting concept because that's what I was wondering. It's like you lose half your children, at least half your children die, and how much value do you put in human life? How much value do you put in your children at that point?
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems like you put a lot more value on the ones that survive.
Yeah, I got a heartbreaking tombstone from like the 1800s where it's just a bunch of Henrys, and they're all children who died, and they just kept naming the kids Henry because, you just want one kid who takes after the father's name.
Yeah,
and
that'll carry
like
on
10 or 12 children.
Wow. Oh,
It's like holy buckets. We should not glorify the past. We should not romanticize the past. We should not romanticize agrarian lifestyles. Those people.
Yeah. Well, is that winding down, everybody? We could end the live hangout and then see what's up, unless somebody got something more to. I'll go ahead and end the broadcast.